Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you a very nice place to be, the inside of a 1968 Rover P5b saloon. So let's begin the tour by looking at the place where the most important passenger would sit, in the back seats. Now this car has the two sumptuous leather armchair style seats, but it was an option from the factory to fit a bench style seat, but these really are the height of luxury from the late 1960s. Beautiful, soft leather armchairs, really beautiful and comfortable to sit on even the longest journey. Now, as with most cars of this age, rear seat belts weren't fitted as standard, so I've retrofitted these lap belts, which Rover made provision for by sort of drilling or making holes in the bodywork behind this rear seat rest to fit those in. Some people like to fit inertia rear seat belts by attaching their spool to the rear parcel shelf, which I guess if it's reinforced would be strong enough. Also on the back seat here is a speaker grille, these holes drilled into the vinyl. There's a small radio speaker fitted underneath, which is visible from the boot. But this car doesn't have a radio fitted actually, so we'll have a look at that a little later on. Well, not have a look at it, as the case may be. This is my umbrella, nothing to do with Rover equipment at all. On the back window you can just make out the heated rear strip here, and the filaments which go through the rear windscreen, and that's also controlled from a switch in the front, which we'll also have a look at a little later on. So another lovely feature at the back of this Rover is a beautiful, nice soft leather armrest, and behind that is a rather ingenious little drinks table, which can be slid out to reveal a recessed area where, for example, you can plonk your decanter of whiskey, which fits very nicely there. Also, there are places in the front here to pop your whiskey glass, and should you feel so inclined, you can pop that forward and slip your little wine glass or champagne glass through there. Wouldn't like to spill any on the leather there, but still I think that functions quite well. Cheers. So with the armrest away, there's another secret compartment under here where you can stash your jewellery or your pearls or anything you like. Actually, this should have a sort of like a lined cardboard box inside, which I haven't got fitted at the moment, but that's coming. But nice little secret place there. This car has the optional front headrests fitted, which you could have done for £12, 5 and 10 originally, which is about £220 in today's money. And these could be moved backwards and forwards by depressing this chrome button here. See, it slides backwards and forwards and backwards. And if you're really important, you would have a reading light underneath here, which unfortunately this headrest doesn't have, but that would be where it would fit. And also you'd have the on-off buttons here for that. So if you wanted to do some work where the light wasn't so good in the back of the car, on the way to the office or on the way home, that would help you. Now, the door furniture here in the back consisted of a chrome window winder and a chrome door handle, which locks when clicked to the forward position and opens when pushed back. And this charming little chrome ashtray. Now, if you smoked a pipe or a cigar, you could have a bigger ashtray fitted, as did Prime Minister Harold Wilson, who was a very famous pipe smoker, had a huge pipe ashtray here on the back seat. Now, I don't have a big ashtray in the back of my car, but I do have one of Harold Wilson's original pipes. There's the man himself and his card from when he was resident in the House of Lords. And this is actually one of his pipes, which I purchased at an estate sale of some of his items a short while ago. And there it is. So I like to keep that in the car, sort of like a lucky charm. Maybe he smoked it in the back of a P5b at one point. Who knows? Another luxurious touch in the back of the P5b is rear seat heating. There is a heater located underneath this seat squab and controlled by this panel between the front seats. As you can see, rear heater, and it's got selections of off, half and full. Now I've never tried this, but I'm sort of just happy knowing it's there, if you know what I mean. Above that is a little blanking button, and underneath that you can see this was for rear speaker volume. That's if you had a radio or a coupe, I think, but I have neither, so that lives on there. Some more features in the back of the saloon are this courtesy light, a nice little hook to hang your suit on or something, and a pull strap with a lovely chrome fitting there. When the car was launched in 1967, it quickly became known as the Gentleman's Club on Wheels. And looking at these thick back leather armchair style seats, it's really easy to see why. These thick back seats were actually only available in very early A-series P5bs and were a carryover from the Mark III, the last truly independently built Rover car. In 1967, the company was sold to Leyland Motors and they started cutting costs. And one of the first things they did was to make the seat backs much thinner. Now, when I first got the car, the seats were not as you see them today. They were in a pretty shocking state. The leather was all dried out, cracked, some of the seams were split, and they'd been repainted a few times, and when you sat in them your shirt would stick to them on hot days. Very uncomfortable. So I was lucky enough to find a local trimmer who agreed to do the whole interior for me for a really good price. They stripped the seats right down to the bare shells, and of course found out that most of the foam inside had disintegrated and was completely unusable. So they cut all new foam, restitched all the seats, and did a very, very fine job. So moving into the front of the car, we move first on the passenger side to the Kienzler clock, which is actually working. They usually aren't. I had to get this fixed when I bought the car because it wasn't working when I got it. Anyway, that's working nicely. Up here, ventilation wise, we have a little hole with a flap, basically. That's all it is. And it works quite surprisingly well. And quite a nice little jet of air comes through there if that's open while you're going at a speed. Also, ventilation wise, there's a little flap under here. Turn to lock, cold air pull. You see a little flap just open and close there. That's ventilation for your feet. Turning to the front of the glove box. Good sized glove box. Lovely African cherry wood finish here. I think that was changed a little later on for later series. Also, here is where the radio would have been if I'd had one fitted, but I'm quite glad this hasn't got a radio because I prefer more wood than plastic, and radios in these cars are pretty difficult to hear when you're going along, especially with a P5b, which has quite a lot of wind noise. So what I tend to do is to just use this Bluetooth speaker, pop it down here and connect it with my phone, and that sounds good enough for me. Heater controls are here: cold, warm and hot. The heating is very good in here. I mean, it's a lovely car to drive in the autumn because it really does warm up nicely and stay warm for quite a long time. Not so good in the summer because the cold air is non-existent. Of course, no air conditioning. Directional is off, demist and defrost, but I haven't tried the defrost because I've never driven this car when it's been that cold. On the side of the binnacle here is the screen wash. The screen washer. Press this. I haven't got the ignition on, so it doesn't work. These three buttons here, one controls the rear backlight, as we saw, the heated rear windscreen. One is a control for the fog lights, and the other one is a cigarette lighter, also known as a phone charger. Moving down is a lovely chrome ashtray and the gear selector. Only A-series cars had this round selector knob at the top. It was changed after to a sort of more profiled thumb fitting. Anyway, and it also has the early style gearbox with the park, reverse, neutral, D2, D1, L configuration. Basically, D1 started you off in first gear, and then you went through second and third. D2 started you off in second gear, meaning you only had to go up to third. And lock was used for going down hills, or locking it in one gear if you wanted to lock it in second gear if you were going down a hill and wanted to use engine braking. Another nice feature at the front of the car is this lovely picnic table here. Now if I move the gear selector back and press this magic button under here, I think I'm going to need two hands. There we go, that's free. This pops out, and inside it you've got your Rover toolkit. Everything you need, from tyre pressure gauge with the Rover symbol on it. There you go. Imperial spanners, screwdriver, Tommy bar, socket set for getting spark plugs out. This one, and a rather useful screwdriver. There you go. There we go. That's a cross head on this end, and if you pull it out, you've got flat head on one end, cross head on the other, and just stick it in the handle. Great idea. Saves a lot of space. So moving on to the front binnacle here, we've got a panel light switch, which I found to be pretty useless, but it's supposed to make the panel lights brighter and dimmer. Heater, fast and slow. Again, minimal difference in that. And wiper, on or off. We'll have a little bit of wiper action. There we go. There we go. And they've parked themselves very nicely. Thank you very much. There we go. That's the speedometer. As you can see, it's a kilometers an hour speedometer, because being in Austria, obviously we drive in kilometers an hour. I had to take the miles per hour one out because they wouldn't give it a certificate here with a miles per hour speedometer. So I actually sourced this one from Holland. In between that, you have the ignition, oil pressure and cold start or choke lights. This was modified later in later P5bs and came out with only two lights. I think the cold start light was taken away because many later cars were fitted with an AED, an automatic enrichment device, automatic choke. Moving on to the next style, we've got temperature, amps and fuel. Fuel is a little bit tricky. You've got to get used to it. If anything under a quarter of a tank, you should really fill up, because it will run out of petrol before it gets to E for empty. This is because this car has a fuel reserve. I've done it once. I was travelling back and I was a quarter of a tank, very happy driving along, and then a few minutes later I ran out of petrol. And the fuel gauge wasn't showing empty, so I of course imagined some disastrous fault, but it wasn't. It was just that I ran out of petrol. And so I went down here and saw the fuel reserve. So by pulling the fuel reserve, gives you or releases an extra gallon of petrol in the bottom of the tank, so enough to get you to a petrol station. So quite a useful thing. And when I fitted my electric fuel pump, I made sure that I didn't lose the fuel reserve, because I have actually needed it. Next to that is the cold start, the choke lever, which it always needs a little bit on starting up. Down at the bottom here, on the pedals, we have, this is a dip switch under that little rest there. Low beam and high beam, brake pedal and accelerator, of course. The bonnet lock or the bonnet release is just there, and we've got a little cold air vent like on the passenger side. Also underneath here is the handbrake, this umbrella like stick here, and a brake light which comes on when the handbrake is on, and also if you're low on brake fluid that will illuminate as well. Here on the right hand side of the binnacle we have lights which are also used in combination with this stalk here, which turns on the main headlights. Right is just side lights, top lights, and main headlights or dip beam is with that stalk down. Move it to the right, just gives you a single parking light on the left hand side. This switch here is the heater control, again fast and slow, doesn't really make a lot of difference, and ignition is here in the binnacle, later moved to the column in the later models. One other stalk here is the indicator stalk. Let's see if we can have a look at that. Another main feature of this car is this huge big steering wheel, quite thin rimmed, huge steering wheel, and this very nice metal ring inside, which is the horn. Also the Rover badge sitting proudly in the middle. Door furniture in the front is very similar to the back. You've got the window winding mechanism and the door lock, which doesn't lock from the inside, just opens from the back. Also we've got these beautiful quarter lights at the front for ventilation, and courtesy light 2. Another nice feature of these armrests at the side, as you can see here, to move, lever, depress button. So this moves up and down. There we go. Pretty clunky, but that actually works. Same on the other side, except the sticker's missing. Also, we've got these little map pockets, which surprisingly enough have some maps in them, so if ever I get lost around the north of England, the south of England, or southern Scotland, I've got the good old 1 shilling SO map to point the way. So I hope you all enjoyed the tour of the interior of my Rover P5b saloon. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you again very soon.